Stacy. We met at Ballpex last year, a table next to ours on topical. She's a graphic designer as a profession, but she's mainly interested in maxi card. I don't know if you know what a maxi card is when the postcard and the stamp kind of match, sent together. And she told me that mainly those are in Europe. We don't find that many in the United States. When she traveled, she sent postcards to herself as a diary to remember what she went, what she did, which is kind of interesting. She started postcard swapping, and that led to chain postcards that she will talk about today. Note that she designed our 50th anniversary postcard in record time in January. Her father twisted her hands and said, You have to do it. It was fantastic. So thank you for that. Bill Ross, her father, is a member of our club. The floor is yours, Stacy.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Stacy Adam. Just to give a little bit more background, I started collecting stamps about 10 years ago. My background in graphic design is sort of what led me to starting to collect stamps, just because I was doing invitations and I wanted the stamps to sort of match the theme of the invitation. That sort of led me into vintage and older postage and full sheets and all the amazing topics and all the amazing artwork that there is. And it just sort of snowballed into that. Started getting into chain cards, and I'll do my best to start explaining what those are in just a moment. But I started getting into chain cards because as I was collecting stamps, I did start to do some postcard swapping, but it was mostly to see stamps and get these stamps from around the world from different people. I really liked the postcards. I liked the handwritten nature of people just sending snail mail, which is not really done very often in our current times. One thing led to another, and I found chain cards. I found it through social media. So far, to the best of my knowledge, the chain cards are it's groups and that are organized mostly on Instagram. That was how I sort of came about it. People posting postcards, hashtags, and hashtag stamps, hashtag postcards, hashtag chain cards, and one thing led to another. So, to get into it a little bit, chain cards are postcards that have the back will eventually be covered in stamps, and it's typically based on a certain theme. There are going to be 4 to 5 members in a chain card group. There's always an organizer. So somebody can post on Instagram, I'm looking to build a group for the theme of red flowers. It can really be anything that you can find a stamp for. It can be. Then this organizer will build a group of people with different stamps that are all red flowers. It'll be from typically from different places around the world. If the stamps are smaller, a lot of times US participants are asked to provide 2 stamps to kind of help fill out the card with fewer members. But then some other countries, they have much larger stamps, they have mini sheets, things like that. So it can vary a little bit. Maybe one person is only giving 1 stamp because it's a larger stamp. So after thing is found, the chain card, my graphic shows it's going from one place to another, maybe in Europe, another place maybe in Europe, maybe to Russia, China, and then it eventually ends up back with you with all these stamps. So here's an example, well, 5 examples of different chain cards that I've done. These are, you can see, are very topical. One is windmills, one's ice cream, we have red fox, snowflakes, and even aliens. This is the back of the postcard. This is what it looks like when it gets back to you and it's finally done. You've got all these stamps from around the world on a specific topic. This is the front of the postcards here. So I typically chain card numbers, specifically me, but I would say most want the front of the postcard to be the same theme as whatever the stamps that are going to be gathered are. It just makes overall really aesthetic look. And when you're putting in your album, you flip through it, it's a nice effect and for everything to kind of have that specific theme. So for chain cards, if you want to get started, like I said, Instagram is really the place that to go. It's the only place that I know of that does it. I don't know if any websites or forums have started doing this yet. In order to find a chain card group, you can search for hashtags chain cards, chain card, CC, chain card project, and then you'll see different posts that are, this is an example of a post that I saw on Instagram recently. It's US, the theme of this chain card is going to be US state Maryland stamps. The person who's going to be hosting this has showed examples of what can qualify. If you have these stamps, that would be great, or stamps like these. Then in the caption, they sort of say what they're looking for. So someone looking for 4 to 5 reliable participants from wherever to provide 1 to 2 authentic stamps, open to international members, US members, please offer 2 stamps if not providing a first class postcard or equivalent. And then they begin to say, people say, post and say, or send them a message and say, I have these stamps, can I join the group? And then the host will say either yes or no, depending. Sometimes somebody's already asked to join with the same stamps. Sometimes the host is like, oh, I already have a card with those stamps. It can be whatever the host decides. And then they begin to fill it out. So you can see that the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they begin to fill out as people have joined. Once they have 4 to 5 members, they will then create a private message with those people. Around as you're going to start sharing info with everybody in the group. The things you need to share are the images of your stamps, stamp sizes, name, and address. I'll show you in a minute why the stamp sizes are really important for chain cards. Sometimes if you have a series, like if it's a red flower and you've got, say, different red flowers, but only like people have to choose the stamp, or if it's just like a stamp, like just a flower theme. So that's a really popular theme to get started in because there's so many options. As you probably know, the US Post Office, when they do a new booklet of stamps, they'll have 4 or 5 different versions of a flower stamp per booklet. So you could post those into the group. People could pick the one they want. That's always a possibility. It just depending on what's being offered. Have to share your address. Once everyone shares their address and location, a path is created, and it's the path that each card is going to go on. So, for example, I would start obviously with my card in the US. Then I might send it to England. And then the person in England is going to send their card and all the other cards to somebody in Germany, maybe. The person in Germany is going to send their cards to somebody in Singapore. Singapore might send it to Canada, and Canada would send it back to me. This is the path that everyone follows. And it ensures if you're in Singapore, you start in Singapore and send yours to Canada. And then the path continues along that line. The path very rarely changes. That ensures that you get your card back with all the stamps because it is traveled to each location. So preparing your card can take some time. So first thing you want to do is protect your card. This is a personal preference, really. Some people don't, but some people like to, because your card is traveling through so many different locations. It's often advised to put a protective cover sheet on the front of the postcard. That way you can have information here. So in this one here, I have the theme of what the chain card is. So it's vintage cards chain card. Please do not remove this paper because that's my protective paper. And then I have my profile name. That way, any members in the group, they know, like, oh, this is for this chain card group, and this is the members card who it is. So they know. And then I can also sometimes will put an address on this cover sheet in case it gets lost. It can eventually come back to me. For adding this protective cover, you can use clear tape or you can use washi tape, whichever you decide. The reason that we ask for the stamp sizes is so that we can lay out the chain card. Not everyone does this. Most people who do chain cards do, though. The reason for that is sometimes you're using every single inch of the postcard, every millimeter of the postcard to figure out where the stamps are going to go so that they all can fit. And after I usually try to create basically little puzzle pieces almost. So using scrap paper, I mark out and cut out the size of each stamp. I write the initials of the country that it's coming from so I can then lay it out however best works for my size postcard. And then after that, I can arrange them all together, make sure that it works. There's some people who don't do this. One of the problems can be if they're just sending a blank card, people are just kind of putting the stamps on however they want. By the time it gets to the last location, there might not be room because it wasn't really pieced together kind of like a puzzle. And in this sample that I'm showing, I actually had to have one stamp lay on top of a mini sheet that was just a decorative part of the mini sheet. And the only reason I was able to do this was because my card was going to that country first before it was going to the other country. So they could put down that mini sheet first and then the person could put theirs on top. So after you kind of figure it out with these pieces of paper, I usually like to mark up the areas with pencil because I can erase the pencil later after the stamps have been added. Some people will leave, they'll just like washi tape this little scrap pieces of paper to each of the cards, but that can get kind of hard and complicated. I just think it's better just to mark it with pencil. And then once it goes everywhere, people know exactly where to put their stamp and there's no questions about it. So preparing for mailing is probably one of the hardest parts of chain cards to get used to and to even explain. So I'm going to try and do my best. So the first thing that you have to be aware of is that the stamps that are already on a card that might come to you from other countries, they need to be covered with a protective paper before you mail it. And this protective paper actually acts as it's what you're going to put the mailing address onto. It's what you're going to put any additional postage on that you might need. It helps the post office employees so they're not confused, like, why is there a stamp from the Netherlands on this card? The post office employees are not going to see those other stamps that are coming from other countries because you're going to cover them up with this protective paper. Is in this example, I had already received 2 other chain cards for this group before I got my card ready. I wanted to send them all out at the same time to save on postage. So I basically figured out again, like a puzzle. I laid them next to each other so that each one could have the US stamp showing. I taped them down with washi tape carefully so they wouldn't shift around. And then I actually used an envelope and I cut out the spaces in the envelope where the US stamps were so that they could be postmarked, used as actual postage. In this example here, I actually ended up with enough postage to send this internationally. I did not need to add any extra postage on top, but as you can see, there's plenty of space to do that if I had to add any extra postage. And I also, underneath deliver to, that is where I wrote the recipient's address. People will add little notes, as you can see here. This one says, to the US postal employee, please no pen or marker cancels. Thank you. Unfortunately, even when we go into post offices and ask for a hand cancel, a lot of times people will get a chain card and it will have the stamp covered in black. It doesn't happen too much, but it's happened enough that it's a very sad thing when you get your chain card and it's got this black Sharpie over the beautiful stamp and you've been gathering these stamps on the similar theme. For this particular card, this was my final card when it came back to me. So you can see how the one stamp is overlaid on the mini sheet. And you can see the front of my postcard that I selected. It's really cool. It's really fun to do. And the final results always look really nice. I hope I've explained it a little bit. I'm sure there will be questions, though. There's usually questions.
Thank you, Stacy.
I'd like to make a comment. Stacy tried to explain this to me about the visuals. I'm so glad she did it with visuals because I could not figure out what she was talking about when she told me about this years ago. So good job, Stacy.
Thank you.
I have, first of all, or a comment. First of all, I could see you doing this as a graphic designer because it's very precise, it seems, where you put the stamps and how you measure and all of that. So the stamps are mint stamps, right? They're not
So it depends on the host. There are some people who host these chain card groups who do say, I only want mint stamps from countries of origin. That is their preference. That is how they want their card to be. That's how they want the group to be built. Other hosts, they are really just in it for the fun of it. They are less strict on what they want. And so you can have sometimes used stamps. Sometimes it's used stamps from country of origin. Sometimes, especially if it's a really unique or really kind of niche topic, and you might not be able to find many stamps on that, then the host will say, basically, anyone can join with any stamps that are of this topic, whether or not it's from country of origin, whether or not it's mint. If it's not mint, basically you have to glue it on the postcard. For the most part, those are going to be mailed just in an envelope with proper postage included.
These stamps paste taped onto the postcard's back.
They're adhered. They're either, whether it's a self-adhesive stamp, the gum adhesive, like lick and stick, or whether it's been glued on because it was already used postage. They are adhered to the envelope. They're not just taped on. They're adhered to the postcard. They aren't just taped on.
The postcard is mailed naked, not in an envelope.
It is mailed with the post. For the example that I provided with the vintage cars, that was postage, US postage, that was perfectly acceptable to use. But the cards are not mailed naked because you'd have to write an address on the card. Eventually, there's not going to be space for an address because the back of the card is getting completely filled. And that's what that cover paper is. It's either cover paper or it's you're cutting out blocks in an envelope so that the stamps are getting postmarked. You have a place to write the address, but all the other stamps are protected, and essentially the card is protected. So it's not getting sent as a postcard. It's getting sent basically as like a standard mail.
In an envelope.
Not always in an envelope, no. No. Just protected. Yeah. So you will cover up if it's a postcard that you're not sending in an envelope. You will just cut out the blocks for your stamps to come through. You will tape that protective cover on the back of the card. That way you can write the address, write a return address if you need to, and then add any extra postage. Because sometimes especially if you're using vintage stamps, I might have a pink flower stamp that's 2 cents that I'm doing. So I'm going to have to add extra postage, especially if it's going internationally. When you do that cover paper, the person who's receiving it will pull that cover paper off that has any extra postage, that has the address written, that has the return address. They will take that cover paper off before adding their stamps to it. Then they'll add their stamps, cover everything up again, covering the stamps that aren't from their country, and cutting open a window for their stamps.
So how do they put a new address on there?
It's the new address is going to go on the new cover sheet. So every time it goes to a new location, you are taking the old cover paper off and you're putting your stamps on, and you're putting a whole new cover paper on and writing the new address on that.
Okay.
Well, it's not really a naked postcard. It's not really an envelope postcard, but
Yeah.
it's kind of in between.
And this is why it's so hard to explain.
Yeah, no, it's okay. You're doing a good job. Thank you.
No, it's a neat hobby. Very nice.
It can be time consuming, especially if you sign up for too many groups at once.
With post crossing, that's enough.
Stacy, I have a question. When this postcard gets to the third or fourth recipient and they uncover their stamps, over here, of course, your stamp needs to be in the upper right-hand corner. Is that an issue if their stamp is in the wrong place?
Your stamp actually does not. The U.S. stamps actually do not have to be in the upper right-hand corner. As long as they're somewhere on the card, it is accepted and approved. One of the reasons that it's good to get it hand canceled too is just an added level of, hey, this has been approved. This can go through. Because some of these things, the machine cancels it in that upper right corner. But no, there can be a stamp anywhere on the envelope, and it's considered paid for.
That works for most countries.
It works from, yes, it does.
Oh.
Some countries are way better about it than the US.
Thank you.
But in the US, like as long as the regulations, I've had to go in, especially just as a stamp collector and with getting covers and things like that, the handback policy where if you are a stamp collector and you take, let's say, first day covers to the post office to have them hand canceled, they can hand that back to you as part of being a philatelic collector. Even though like some places, some postal employees don't know that there's bylaws. So there was a time I had them on my phone from the post office website to say, look, this is section this that states that. So there are things you can do that. I've had to educate post office employees about what hand canceling even is, because I've had people who they were like, I don't know what that is. Sometimes they're really happy, like, oh, that's great. I didn't know that. I've had people in front of me who have taken a Sharpie marker and crossed out the stamps with Sharpie when I asked it to be hand canceled. You get it's one of those hobbies where it takes it's your multiple people are involved, so you just have to be patient and do your best sometimes.
I put a stamp on the message side of a postcard, hand canceled.
Yeah.
And the post office was saying that's the only way because we cannot hand cancel without stamping a stamp. I said that's not true, but anyway, they say if you have the stamp on the message side, it will not arrive. It arrived perfectly.
It really does. It might take a little longer, but it does.
I'm no expert at post crossing, but one of the things that I know about them is they have a website where they can track the journey that the card has taken. Is there any sort of Instagram hashtag the best way to kind of see the finished products with these typically?
You can certainly look at finished products because we create for each chain card theme, that private message is created with the members. We keep tabs on each other. So if I get somebody's card, I will take a picture of the card. I'll say, so-and-so's card has arrived. Look, here's the condition of it. Here's my stamps on it. I'm going to mail it out tomorrow. So everyone tries to keep tabs. So then if you haven't heard from somebody in a while, you can be like, hey, so-and-so in Germany, have you received my card yet? It's been a while. And so we can keep tabs on that. A lot of times for that group, especially when we get our card back, we'll say, I got my card back. Thanks, everyone. You kind of get to see everyone's finished card that way as well.
No, that's awesome. Thank you.
I belong to a group on Facebook that has the group going, and they'll show you cards that they have. And you can put your name in for like a lottery numbers, and then they'll actually draw your name. If they draw your name, then you have to do a giveaway. And then it continues. It's really nice because you get to meet new people, and then sometimes you'll be like, do you do swapping? Swapping all the time, back and forth, different cards.
At one point I did, when I was, I guess, discovering what excited me the most, I did do postcard swapping through Instagram for a while too. You'd have your profile and you have, these are the cards I have available. Anyone want to postcard swap with me? And I did that for a while too. Again, I mostly liked getting to see the stamps and connecting with people from other countries. Some people, we started kind of almost like pen paling a little bit. So then we just send each other surprise postcards or letters and things like that. So I really liked that aspect of it. It is time consuming, especially between the chain cards, postcard swapping, stamp collecting, and everything else. It becomes time consuming. So I had to sort of pull back on some things.
Thank you, Cheryl. I think wants to say something.
I was going to ask, how many of these do you have in your collection? And I just collect postcards. I don't collect stamps. So where do you get all your stamps from?
I actually have my binder here. I haven't counted in a while, but this is it's a binder of all of my chain cards.
Wow, you have a lot.
I think the last time I counted, it was 50 something, but I haven't done it really a lot in the past year or two. I think I have probably closer to 70 looking at it now. I should probably count. I used to write on the chain card, the number chain card that I was on, but at some point I stopped. I think I lost track of, and I just stopped writing it on the card. I would say I probably have somewhere between 50 and 70 pretty cool themes too. They're fun to go through and look at. As far as for stamp collecting, getting stamps, obviously stamp shows. You go to ball packs, go to Apex, you can find people who are selling, especially vendors who sell full sheets or some at face value. You can just go through these bins of these full sheets of stamps, and it's very topical based. So there are just so many different things, animals and flowers and birds and technology, science. There's a ton of different opportunities there. And that postage, because they're selling these full sheets at face value. In the United States, you can still use that postage. It has been paid for. It still counts as acceptable postage to use. Some other countries, they have like postage before 1974 or something cannot be used. Like other countries have started putting in some stipulations, but as of now, you can still use that in the US. So that's a great place to go. Other places, if you don't have access to stamp shows, eBay, you can get a lot of vintage stamps on eBay. There's a website called Hipstamp, which is kind of like eBay for stamp collectors. You can go there. I think the APS has verified sellers online. Then Etsy does too. Their prices are usually higher, but you could get like usually smaller sets. Like you could get 5 to 10 theme stamps instead of buying a full sheet if you don't want to. For these groups in particular, like a lot of times you can get blocks of stamps instead of buying a full sheet, like on eBay. So it would be, if there's a specific stamp you're looking for, you just type that stamp in, you type the year, and then you would just say like a block. Because a block will be like it's usually either 4, 6, or 8 stamps together, and you will most likely pay more than the stamp value, but you might pay less than what a full sheet would cost you.
Sometimes at the stamp show, there are some dealers that sell some of the sheets at less than face value.
It's always good when you can find something like that.
And I may have missed this earlier, but has anybody tempted fate and done larger than like a continental sized? Are people?
A lot of times other countries have actually requested like postcards not to exceed a certain size because their pricing system is such that any card over a certain size like doubles the cost or something. So there was one time, oh, I wonder where I have it. I did a chain card, and we had so many members in the group with large stamps or mini sheets that what a lot of us did is we took 2 postcards and taped them on the side and folded it together like a book. So it had on either side, like the front cover and the back cover would have been the front of one postcard and then the front of another postcard. When you opened it up, the insides would have been the back of the postcards, and that's where people were putting their stamps. And then they would close it back, or they could flip it either way. So they could flip it so that the two, anyways, it was in this group, that was kind of a fun challenge because we were all trying to figure out how are we going to do this? What are we going to do to keep it to this minimum size?
In some places, you'd have to pay letter rate for that.
For most of these, you will have to pay letter rate, even in the United States, because you're not sending it as a just standard. You're covering it. You're sort of modifying it so it's not just a postcard anymore. You're adding a little bit more bulk to it with the tape and the cover paper. So most of these, you do not get to pay the postcard rate, but you're typically, for the most part, sending it to other countries anyway. So you're already paying international.
Have you ever tried to start one of these with a postal card rather than a postcard?
No, I have not.
I was going to eventually get around to asking, do you have a favorite subject of stamp that you have received or worked through? And then also a note for somebody looking to start their stamp collection. Since the Capitol Beltway, if you go to the Smithsonian Postal Museum,
yes,
upstairs, there's actually a bin, and they give you an envelope and say, take 10. So if you want to start there.
To sort of carry off of that, a lot of times at Ballpacks, and I know the APS stamp show, kids area, I think even Ballpacks has changed it to new collectors or something, where you can go and there's a room and they have just a ton of stamps on a table, and you can go through and pick out ones that you like. I have actually done for students, my daughter's homeschooled or part of a homeschool co-op. For an activity, I got a box of stamps from the APS. They have a learn to stamp sort of initiative. They sent me a box of stamps. They sent me some other stuff. The kids just got to go through stamps and collect them. They loved it. I think it's part of the Stamps Teach program or something. So it's definitely, yeah, the stamp shows. I think they're really trying hard to entice new people and new interest into it. Now,
Well,
as
if you're
far
a member
as
of the Capitol Bellway Postcard Club or you go to Ballpark and Apex, we have a huge box of stamps.
oh yeah, see there. Oh
Yeah,
yes, you did.
yeah.
I remember. Yes.
Yeah, use that to make art on a postcard. So you should
Yes.
be able to cut and use it as the Japanese have done
Yes.
to make a design using the colors of the stamps.
Mm-hmm. See,
So
the first question was, do I have a favorite topic? I would say my favorite topics sort of go around what my interests are in general. I think some cards just end up turning out really beautiful, really nice. That can just depend on if all the stamps kind of look good together. Like this one is, I don't know if you can see this, but this is snow globes. I just think it visually looked really good in the end. That was the front of. I have another one that was for chocolates, which is that was a hard one to do. I do collect primarily space stamps. That's my biggest part of my collection. Oh, and love stamps too. So any chain cards that I've done that are space related or love stamp related are always a favorite. Like I mentioned before, I have a lot of flower ones and I do garden, but the flower ones are some of the easiest to get started with. That's such a variety of flower stamps that it's not hard to find. Some stamps can be very hard and tricky to find if you want to be part of a certain chain group.
Michael had a question.
Well, I started scheming. Have you ever done one where, let's say there are 4 or 5 people total involved and kind of each end up with a card, like you change so that like the first person gets it, but then the second person, like, so there are 5 cards made in total of the same theme or the same.
Well, that's actually how it works. Everyone has their own card.
That's it.
Everyone gets their own card.
Okay, got
So
it.
that is another part of when a host is creating a group, you have to make sure you have at least 4 to 5 of
Versions
the stamp. Or in my case, a lot of times I have to have 4 to 5 versions of one of the stamps and then 4 to 5 versions of the other stamp that I'm offering, since I'm typically offering 2 stamps. So you have to make sure you can't just have one stamp that is a red flower and just call it a day. No, you need 4 to 5 stamps that are that same red flower.
That makes so much more sense to me now. You explained it